Okay, so you've sent us some really, really interesting stuff to dig into today.
Yeah, this should be fun.
We're looking into the Moonless Nights conspiracy theory, which is basically the idea that sometimes when you look up and the moon's not there, it's not just, a normal new moon or anything like that.
Right.
It's that something's actively being done to either hide it or move it, and we're going to go through all the different arguments and the sources you send us and try to really break down what this whole thing is all about.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, just glancing at the material here, it really makes you look up at the night sky a little differently, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump right in. Okay. So the main thing, the main idea here is that the moon's not there, sometimes on purpose.
Right. It's not just a natural cycle. It's a deliberate act. That's the core belief. And it sort of steps outside the bounds of what we consider normal astronomy, right?
Totally. And the way that this is supposed to happen, how they're actually doing this, is where it gets really kind of sci-fi. Right?
Yeah. The idea of obscuration technology.
Obscuration technology, exactly.
Yeah. So we're talking about things like, these incredibly advanced holographic projections that could be used to basically project a star field where the moon should be.
Wow.
Or cloaking devices, which, again, we're talking super advanced tech. But the idea that you could render the moon invisible. And there are even some sources here that talk about the idea of physically moving the moon, which...
Physically moving the...
Yeah, the sheer scale of that is just mind-boggling.
That's just crazy. So, I mean, if some group or organization, whatever it is, has the ability to, mess with the moon like that, you got to think they're also controlling the information around it, right?
Absolutely. That's a central part of this theory. And we see it in a lot of these narratives, right? Like where there's these unseen forces that are pulling the strings. And the idea is that they're manipulating data, they're censoring any kind of visual evidence that contradicts their narrative.
Yeah.
And anyone who speaks out, who questions it, is immediately discredited.
Right. Like, oh, you saw something weird in the sky. You're crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the signs? What do these people who believe in Moonless Nights say we should be looking for to know that something's up?
Well, they talk about really unusually dark nights.
Yeah.
Darkness that seems to go beyond just, cloud cover or light pollution. They'll also point to things like discrepancies in astronomical records, photographs of the moon that seem inconsistent or strange, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, interestingly, they put a lot of weight on personal testimonies.
Really?
Yeah, people who distinctly remember nights when the moon was just not there, and there's no conventional explanation for it. And even, unusual animal behavior is sometimes cited.
Animal behavior, like what kind of stuff? Like, are they acting strange when the moon's not there?
It's not super specific in the sources, but the idea is that, animals being more attuned to natural cycles might sense this unnatural absence in a way that maybe we don't consciously pick up on.
Oh, that's interesting. So, even the things we all learned about in school, like the new moon phase or lunar eclipses, that doesn't count for them, right?
No, those are seen as part of the cover-up, basically.
Right, okay. So, what about the evidence? What kind of stuff do they point to say, see, this is real?
Well, there's what they call anomalous photographic evidence.
Okay.
Pictures where supposedly the moon should be visible, but it's not there in the photo. Or photos that show, weird shapes or irregularities on the moon that they say could be signs of this obscuration technology.
So it's all about, interpretation. You see what you want to see in the pictures.
Kind of, yeah. And then, as we said, the personal testimonies are really important.
Yeah.
People vividly describing these nights when the moon just vanish. It's firsthand accounts for them.
Right, and it's that feeling, too, of something being wrong, even if you don't have, hard proof.
Exactly. And then there's the idea that, the official records themselves could be tampered with, right? So they look for discrepancies in astronomical data and say, see, they're trying to hide the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them even go back to ancient myths and legends and say, look, these old stories about darkness or a missing moon, that's proof that this has been happening for centuries.
Wow, so they're really going deep.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's talk about, the normal explanation. What do scientists say about why we don't see the moon sometimes?
Well, it's pretty straightforward, astronomically speaking. The moon doesn't have its own light, it reflects the sun's light.
Right.
So as it orbits the Earth, the amount of sunlight hitting the part we can see changes, and that's what causes the phases.
Okay.
So during the new moon phase, the moon is between the Earth and the sun, so the side facing us is not lit up, and we basically can't see it.
Which makes perfect sense.
You know,
Right. And then you have things like clouds that can make the night even darker, even if it's not a new moon.
Exactly, yeah. Cloud cover, haze, dust in the atmosphere, light pollution, all those things can affect how visible the moon is. And sometimes even optical illusions can play a role.
Right, like your eyes playing tricks on you.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing, I think, is that there's just no real evidence for this Moonless Nights idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, science relies on empirical evidence, things that can be tested and verified.
Yeah.
And there's just no credible scientific data to support this theory. It's mostly anecdotes, interpretations, and speculation.
Right. But you have to wonder, why do people believe this stuff then? What's the psychology behind it?
Well, there are a few things. It's appealing to think you have some secret knowledge that most people don't. Right?
Yeah, like you're in the know.
Exactly. And people also crave mystery and wonder, and in a world where science explains so much, conspiracy theories offer that.
Mm.
And then there's distrust of authority. If you don't trust the government or scientists, you're more likely to believe these alternative explanations. And people are also really good at finding patterns, even when they're not really there.
Oh, totally. I do that all the time. Okay, but let's be real here for a second. If you really think about it, the idea of moving the moon or hiding it completely, that's like impossibly difficult, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The amount of energy and technology it would take to do something like that is just way beyond what we're capable of.
Yeah.
And it would leave traces, it would be detectable, it wouldn't be a secret for very long.
Right, right. So, okay, let's say for a second that a lot of people start believing in this Moonless Nights thing.
Yeah.
What could be some of the bad things that can happen?
Well, one concern is that it could erode trust in science.
Yeah, like if you don't believe scientists about the moon, what else do you not believe them about?
Exactly. And that can make it harder to solve real problems that need scientific solutions, like climate change.
Yeah.
And it also distracts people from those real issues. Instead of focusing on things that actually matter, you're spending time and energy worrying about a conspiracy theory.
Right. And I bet it can also be pretty bad for people's mental health, right?
Okay. Yeah, constantly feeling like everything is being manipulated, that even the sky can't be trusted, that can create a lot of anxiety and paranoia.
Yeah, for sure. And with the internet and social media, these ideas spread so fast.
Oh yeah, it's incredible how quickly misinformation can spread online.
Totally. So, okay, we've gone pretty deep into this whole Moonless Nights thing.
We have. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. And I think it shows how powerful belief can be, even when it goes against what we know to be true.
Absolutely. And it highlights that human need to find meaning and make sense of the universe, even if it means looking for answers in unconventional places.
Yeah, and it makes you think, like, what is it about the unknown that draws us in like that?
Why are we so fascinated by mysteries and things we can't explain? So tonight, when you look up at the sky, whether you see the moon or not, let me think about that for a second. Like, how do you approach those things in life that you don't fully understand? What makes you believe something, and how do you decide what's real and what's not? It's a good question to ask yourself, no matter what you think about Moonless Nights.